At this time, I invite the young and the young at heart to join me for today's message. A couple of nights ago, I think most of you probably celebrated Halloween, right? Yeah. Well, today's celebration is one that comes immediately after Halloween, and it's called All Souls. In some cultures, it's called the Day of the Dead. Now, you might think, why would you be celebrating that? And it's because you're not celebrating that someone died, but you're actually celebrating remembering them and the life that they led and what they meant to you when they were still alive. So that's what today's service is about, a day of remembering. Have any of you had someone close to you that died, passed on? Anybody? You did? Who was it?
I think it was I remember. My great-great-great-grandpa and my great-great-great-grandma.
Okay. Do you remember having any kind of interaction with them? Or did you remember doing stuff with them, playing or something?
Well, I never met my
Okay. Okay. So that's what we're doing today. Anybody else?
My aunt passed away, and then one of my very close family friends.
Anybody else? No? So, when these folks passed away, how did it make you feel? Sad? Sad. Sad. Yeah. And we do feel sad. Even when we have, like, a pet that dies, it makes us feel sad because we did have a relationship with that pet. I had a cat that died a few years ago, and he was 16 years old, and I had no idea I was going to react so emotionally about the loss of my companion, Mr. Charlie, that I'd had with me so many years. He traveled with me back and forth on planes from the East Coast to the West Coast, and it was just such a loss. So that's what we feel when someone dies or passes on. And this gives us an opportunity to remember the good times that we had with them. That's what this day is about, because they were fun, or sometimes you might have learned some lessons from like a great-grandmother or somebody. But that's what today's service is about, a day of remembering. So at this time, what I'd like you to do is to come up and take one of these pebbles and drop it in the water and speak the name of the person or four-legged animal that you might be missing, that you had fun. Yes, you have. It could be a fish. Yeah, it sure can. Yeah, it could be a fish. Doesn't have legs, but it could be a fish. So that's what we're going to do now. So each one of you come up one by one and take a pebble and drop a stone in the water and say out loud the name. So thank you for sharing. Sometimes it's a little hard to talk about death and dying and people that have left us or a pet that's gone. It does make us sad, but this is an opportunity to be able to get it out. Why do you think it's so hard for us to talk about dying? Anybody? Fear. That's fear because we know that someday that's going to happen to us. Don't know when. Loss. Yes. I think a lot of the fear is because we don't know what's going to happen when we go. It's like, what's next? If we knew exactly where we were going to go, where we're going to end up, and what was going to happen, I don't think we'd be so afraid. But I think, in my opinion, that's the biggest fear, is the unknown. Let us unite in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, whom we know best in our own loving and being loved, hold us as we remember those we have loved and those who have loved us. Hold us as we remember those who have sorrows. May our gratitude sparkle in our lives. May our tears lubricate our souls. Help us to know that we are not alone in our grieving, and help us also to come to that peaceful place in which we can take what we learned from those who have gone before us into our own lives. Remind us that we too are mortal, and that the only enduring legacy we leave is the love that shines through our lives. May these brave and lovely spirits live again in our tender thoughts and prove that death and distance are powerless to sever the bonds that connect truly loving hearts. Since the late Middle Ages, the dead have been remembered in countries around the globe in formal church services on November 1st and 2nd, All Saints and All Souls Day. Both of these religious days are baptized versions of secular holidays that are celebrated in various cultural traditions. Now, Unitarian Universalists aren't typically attached to the significance of either date, despite the prominence of the churches in our denomination that bear the name All Souls. We have All Souls Tulsa, All Souls Washington, D.C., and All Souls New York, just to name a few. Moreover, our historical connection to early Congregationalists on the Universalist side of our tradition regarded all of the faithful who fill the church pews as saints, not entities in some far-off mythical place, but real people doing real things right here on earth. In their book, The Great Cosmic Mother, authors Manya Sue and Barbara Moore remind us that festivals celebrating life and death have been traced to origins dating back thousands of years, because the paradox of life and death was somehow made more bearable through ritual expressions of their fury. In many parts of the world, celebrations continue to honor the departed. One elaborate festival held at this time of year is the Day of the Dead, and it's observed on these days in Mexico and in Latin American countries. However, from California to Massachusetts, Day of the Dead services are becoming very commonplace celebrations in Unitarian Universalist congregations. The ceremonies combine millennia-old Mexican Indian traditions with Christian rituals of All Saints and All Souls days. Moreover, as we come into closer multicultural associations with each other in our communities, we are able to observe some different attitudes toward death. When I asked a longtime friend of mine to give me feedback on this sermon for today, what I got instead was forwarded to me several YouTube clips of the origins of All Souls and All Saints. And they included reasons why these days shouldn't be acknowledged or celebrated. The reasons ranged from the pagan origins, which I prefer to refer to as earth-based systems, to the overlapping criticism of All Hallows Eve and the danger in trick-or-treating that somehow raises vibrations that will damage our spirits. I have to admit that I had a brief discussion with my friend about these points. But as most of you know, when anyone has become polarized in a myopic view of anything, there's no changing that need to be right. So after my explanation about the overlapping of the earth-based and Christian systems, I decided to just end the discussion. While sophisticated North Americans may be tempted to view some of these practices as morbid and primitive, Reverend Peter Morales, president of the Unitarian Universalists Association, reminds us in his message, Bringing the Dead to Life, that the genius of Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, is the way it mixes celebrating and mourning all at the same time. It both affirms life and gives us a chance to share our grief. He continues saying that if we dismiss the Day of the Dead as pure superstition, we can easily miss profound spiritual and psychological insight that makes this tradition powerful. Because no matter who you are and what your status in life may be, the one thing that we mortals all have in common is that someday each of us will be touched by loss through death. As dwellers in a technological age, we are connected to the World Wide Web, cell phones, voicemail, and call waiting. But we've cut ourselves off from the web of time. Generally, when we are uncomfortable with the subject of death, it's because we don't know what happens after we die. We're afraid of the unknown. I believe that it is our reluctance to look at all matters related to death that has caused the increased interest in the Day of the Dead celebrations. Because traditional cultures, with their mediums, ghosts, and reincarnations, have understood intuitively something that we've repressed. The dead don't die. They live on. Now, I'm not speaking metaphysically or theologically. I'm talking about very real stuff of biology, history, and memory. Just look in the mirror. The DNA of your ancestors is alive in you. You may have your grandmother's red hair or your Aunt Susan's hazel eyes or Uncle Wilbur's broad nose. We just have to look at our children and our grandchildren to see ourselves and our ancestors. Some of the decisions and choices that were made by our parents and our grandparents helped shape our lives. And the choices that we make every day shape the lives of those to come. My great-grandmother transitioned over 50 years ago, but it was the influence of her community activism in her very small sphere of the world that she lived in that helped shape my consciousness to feel a sense of responsibility to members of my community, and what ultimately resulted in a call to ministry and a theology of love that connects me to people across all racial and cultural boundaries. The interconnections of ancestors stretch across time, and community celebrations or special services embody a different approach to remembering our beloved that have passed on. They acknowledge the sadness that we feel when we think of them, but also has lightened elements, lighthearted elements. It plays with the fragile nature of life and imaginatively embodies our inability or reluctance to see death as an end of us, and certainly not an end of love. Poet May Sarton writes that what has been interwoven cannot be raveled, nor the gift ungiven. The dead moves through all of us, still glowing. Mother and child, lover and lover mated, are wound and bound together and inflowing. Each of us carries memories of those who have died, some so long ago, but somehow they are still with us. So rather than denying our many emotions, we are encouraged to stretch our spirits around them. We remember them in shared times, lessons learned, perhaps a certain gesture or laugh. And in this way, we take a lesson while we live, because we do impact those around us. And we have some say about what that impact will be, what legacy we will leave behind in many different ways. Our own laugh may be remembered one day, our gesture, or lessons. Perhaps it is playfulness or gruffness, generosity in word, time, resources, or the opposite. We may make these choices day by day and mostly unaware, but it could be otherwise. Our theological ancestors' lives have shaped our thoughts and our actions, just as they have shaped those of our parents and teachers and friends. As Unitarian Universalists, there is a depth of feeling and passion just below the surface among us. We are united not just by abstract principles, and lofty ideals, but by shared history, memory, and personal loss. A day of remembering our dead can be profoundly religious, for when we allow ourselves to feel our place along the continuum of life and death, it moves us deeply. We are reminded of what is most meaningful and joyous in the world. Ultimately, we're celebrating life. Today, we remember those loved ones who have impacted our lives and left us with memories of tears and laughter, of highs and lows. And I believe that it is good to speak aloud the names of those who have gone before us. It is good to remember their lives and their deeds, because we know that every impact continues to linger in love, in lessons, and inspiration. By speaking the names, we acknowledge the ways in which their lives have indelibly shaped ours, because without them, we would not be who we are today. It is a way to remind some who may have forgotten. We remember those known to us personally, our friends and family members. And that's what these celebrations are for, to remind us of, and that's the power in the celebrating. A simple ceremony of remembrance puts us in touch with our place in time and our mortality, and it reminds us that to live is to create a legacy that endures for generations. From my heart to yours, may it be so.